let's check this third presentation. Technology integration as disruptive innovation in education, implications to teaching, learning post-academic era. The authors are Nur Aisha from Indira Gandhi National Open University and Amitshwar Ratra from Indira Gandhi National University, Open University. I think our presenters are here. I see them on the screen and say welcome to our presentation session. Okay, İsmail Dönmez, I think the second, yes, İsmail Dönmez is also here, okay, and okay, now our technical assistant, could you please, Recep, I think you are going to show the short videos of the presentations. Am I correct?
Yes, I can show it.
Okay. Okay, let's watch the short videos of the presentations, and then we are going to start our session.
Just a second.
Hello everyone, I'm İsmail Dönmez. I conduct this study with Salih Güden and Eylem Şener from Uşalpaşa University. Our research title is Discourse Patterns and the Communication Approach Used in STEM Education. The politicians and the education researchers are increasingly focusing on students' continued engagement and success in STEM education. This interest in STEM education reaches more than 450 million items with a simple Google search. That includes in the terms STEM education research. Such a voluminous research shows that STEM education is rapidly developing and vibrant field. The many studies show that STEM education contributes to students the various ways such as attitudes, motivation, and interest. However, there are no studies examining teachers' practices in the classroom commonly. For this reason, it is important to adapt the discourse patterns used by teachers in STEM education in terms of using classroom interaction. So, the aim of the research is to analyze the discourse patterns and the communication approach used by a science teacher in traditional education and the STEM education practice. So, as a research method, we use the case study in this search. So, for analysis the data, we used audio and video records of the classroom practices of a science teacher were used. A total of 160 minutes of teacher and students' dialogues are analyzed from these records. Our research is conducted with one teacher. He has 8 years teaching experience in Ministry of National Education. He also PhD candidate and have an experience in STEM activities. We observe two lessons. One lesson was science lesson. He conducted traditional activities with 80 minutes. We collect 80 minutes video recording. He conduct the density unit with the 7th grade, 24 students, and the other observation conducted in the STEM classroom. As we know, there's a science application lesson. We collect the 80 minutes video recordings. He conduct the density unit with 7th grades, 25 students. So findings, our first question was what kind of discourse pattern used in traditional classroom. In traditional classroom, teacher start the lesson with initiation, then students response, then teacher asks another question, then students response. So go on this process. So our second question was, what kind of discourse pattern used in the STEM classroom? When we look at STEM classroom dialogues, we can see that dialogues are changed. Teacher asks the question, we call that iteration, then student response, but this part we see that teacher evaluate the student's response and start another dialogue with the students, then students response and teacher evaluate again. So we see that in research teacher interacts with students in traditional classroom only, but in the STEM lesson teacher interact with students interact with teachers, also students interact with each other during the process. So when we coded these dialogues, we saw that in the traditional classroom teachers use intel and response changes more commonly. Of course, we use intel response and evaluation, intel response feedback process, but commonly he used the adversary pairs. It consists intel and the response. But when we look at STEM classroom practices, he commonly use the triadic discourse patterns. So it consists in intel, response, and evaluation. So also we ask that what is communication approach in the traditional and the STEM classroom. We see that in the traditional classroom, teacher commonly use non-interactive, authoritative communication approach. But when we look at the STEM classroom, commonly we saw that the teacher use interactive and authoritative. So results, according to the result of the research, it was determined that science teacher used 3 different discourse patterns and triad, change, assistant words, and he used 4 different communication approaches: interactive and dialogue, interactive and authoritarian, and non-interactive and authoritarian. So it has been observed that the most used patterns in terms of discourse patterns and the traditional practice is the adversary pairs. It consists in intuition and response, and non-interactive authoritative in terms of communication approach. And during the STEM activity, it has been observed the most used pattern in terms of discourse patterns in STEM practices is the triadic. It consists in intuition, response, and evaluation, and the interactive and authoritative in terms of communication approach. So result and suggestion, as a result of findings obtained in the study, it's seen that the discourse patterns and the communication approach more advanced in the STEM classroom than the traditional classroom. Although teachers have knowledge and the skills in the STEM application, it's observed that there are communication problems with the teacher and students in STEM activity also, because students are not proposed to STEM practices and teachers still exhibit authoritarian behaviors in the STEM activity, because STEM classroom is more loudly than the traditional classroom. And another important result obtained from the research is the dialogues in the classroom are generally initiated by teachers. It observed that the dialogues initiated by students were either not allowed to or conducted in the short time. In the case, it's an indicator for the authority of the teacher is dominant even in STEM activities in the classroom. Considering these results, it's thought that new studies in science education are needed to increase the awareness of the teachers in the field of classroom communication by using the sample of dialogues of the NIV case in the research. So research can conduct with more than one teacher from different religion and different countries with different experienced teachers. So thanks to attendance. If you have any question about our research, you can mail us. Thank you.
Greetings to all. I am Noor Aisha, a PhD research scholar from Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi, India. The title of my paper is Technology Integration as Disruptive Innovation in Education, Implications to Teaching Learning Post-Pandemic Era. The co-author of the paper is Dr. Amiteshwar Ratra, Associate Professor from Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi, India. The crisis of COVID-19 pandemic has resulted into creating various challenges for teaching learning for all around the globe, including India. In India, there were already various policy provisions for the education of all children, and it aimed to achieve its target of attaining quality education for all Indians by 2030 as per the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 4. But this goal seemed to be more difficult to achieve due to the present crisis of COVID-19 pandemic. Even prior to COVID-19 pandemic and also by this time, technological innovations were advancing a range of possible pedagogic and technological solutions that could be brought to bear on teaching learning. When all the institutions were shut down, they began to provide various academic activities at their levels best through the technological interventions. The responses of COVID-19 suggest that it has a great impact and will have it in the future also. Thus, this paper intends to achieve the three objectives. First, to briefly outline the crisis in the education sector that COVID-19 has created in India, to provide a brief account of development of ICT in Indian education system. Third, to analyze and reflect how technology integration can be considered for the Indian education today and tomorrow for the post-pandemic time. This paper derives its conceptual framework from disruptive innovation theory as described in Christensen et al. 2001. The theory of disruptive innovation explains why educational disruption should matter to people who want to improve the education system. As disruptive innovation can work as a catalyst to bring about more equitable access to high quality education, the theory of disruption can provide researchers, practitioners, and policymakers with a new perspective on increasingly affordable and accessible educational opportunities. Christensen et al. 2001 describes disruption as the mechanism that ignites the true power that allows relatively efficient producers to blossom and force the less efficient producers to wither. Such a destruction and the subsequent reallocation of resources allows for the cycle of construction and destruction to begin anew and enhance productivity. Thus, the paper aims to describe the technology integration in the education system in India at all levels with a brief of the crisis that COVID-19 has created in India. The present study employs document analysis to review the phenomena of disruptive innovation in education and how technology integration can be disruptive innovation for a post-pandemic educational era in India. The paper describes the multiple aspects of disruptive innovation in education in relation to the developments of ICTs and addresses how it can benefit the Indian education system. Many developed countries took no time turning to online learning in the COVID-19 closure of educational institutions. However, in the developing country like India, educational institutions took a little time switching to the online mode of learning. If there was no pandemic, integrating technology in education in India in a systematic way and on a large extent would have taken many years for implementation. However, during the pandemic, when all the institutions were locked down, only the things online were continued, though we all were unprepared to teach and learn completely online. Only the institutions, faculties, and learners could withstand this who can handle the technologies with their infrastructure and expertise. It seems relatable to the Darwin's concept of survival of the fittest. Adoption of technologies in education during pandemic was just with the intention of controlling risk and minimizing the academic loss. It was observed that technophobia did not hinder the enthusiasm and practice. The researchers suggest that the amount of digital learning is correlated to the extent and quality of digital access available to the learners. In India, to carry out the online virtual classes, learners made the use of personal digital devices. Marginalized children faced the academic loss because of the lack of digital devices, internet data, and digital skills. Many students rely on the lessons and assignments sent through merely WhatsApp groups or emails. Considering the various problems and challenges though, the opportunities brought with pandemic cannot be avoided, which facilitated the learners to inculcate the skills of 21st century even in these unpredictable scenarios, thereby suggesting a requirement of a robust educational system which could withstand such a crisis. The Indian Ministry of Human Resource and Development, as per the document of National Mission of Education, described ICT as the tool in education available to enhance the current enrollment rate. The traditional and formal education system process have started the use of ICT in the activities from admission to assessment of a learner. With the ICT developments and its integration, the open and distance learning system is in its fifth generation now and is becoming more and more flexible, interactive, and accessible. And thus, it is observed that the quality of education has evolved due to the developments and integration of ICT in teaching learning process. The education system has seen the year 2020 as a time when more than half of the academic session has experienced a complete closure of the educational institutions. After such a situation, how the students will begin afresh their studies on campus for longer durations is still a challenge. The pandemic has dramatically increased technology integration in the Indian education system. Various digital platforms has undertaken the whole teaching learning process. In this case, to restart the education in the post-pandemic time, technology integration can be helpful in reducing the on-campus time schedules and to support the learners. The positive aspect of these technological interventions during COVID 19 is that it was executed on a large extent in India. The negative aspect includes that it was with less planning, with almost no or little training, insufficient availability of digital devices, poor availability of internet, and little preparation. Thereby, it resulted in a poor learner experience that became unconducive to some learners to sustain their growth. However, to some learners it became more conducive to rely on technological methods for their learning. The example of the sudden rise of SARS endemic can be recalled now, which has given rise to e-commerce. Similarly, COVID-19 pandemic has given rise to e-learning and has highlighted its role in the widespread of education in the pandemic time. So, if the digital online e learning can play such an amazing role even without planning, it becomes obligatory for the educationists, researchers, policymakers to explore its full potential in the implementation. Thus, this study concludes that COVID-19 pandemic has changed how learners learn. New technological interventions for education has brought much needed disruptive innovation instantly that will lead to multiple innovations, whereas the negative impacts indicated towards that this rapid integration of technology can widen the digital divide, which will look for more public and private partnerships for research and development and training. It is now believed that in the post pandemic era, the traditional offline learning and e learning can go hand in hand. Thus, a new hybrid or blended learning models of education would work best with significant benefits to eventually overcome or reduce the various challenges of integrating technology in the curriculum to address the concerns of equity and inclusion in the educational transactions in India. Thus, it is concluded that COVID-19 pandemic can be seen as the disruptive innovation for India which will bring many opportunities covertly with it if technology is suitably integrated in education and the teaching learning is designed and implemented with proper planning and training. These are the sources that I refer for this study. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for our presenters, Professor Dr. Ismail Dönmez and Nur Aisha. I would like to check again if our first presenter is here or not. Chinaza Solomon Ironsi from Near East University.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. Recep, could you please could you show us the first presentation's video, please?
Hi, everyone. Today I'm making a presentation on learners' perception on the use of e-learning platforms during the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Chinaza Solomon Ironsi. These are the outlines that we're using for this presentation. If you look at the screen, the pictures in front of you, it's all about COVID-19, lockdown, quarantine. These has been the activities that we've seen throughout within this past few months ago. This led to lockdowns in activities and social activities, and also our school system. This led to closure of the schools, giving rise to learners learning from home and teachers teaching from home with the use of online resources. That's the concept of e-learning. It's an integrated set of interactive online platforms and services that provide learners with, information with regards to education information, and assist and enhance education delivery and management. It cuts across to the use of mobile phones, use of laptops, tablets, all online devices, to carry out effective and efficient instruction delivery. These the overview. Lots and lots have been written with regards to e-learning. Lots of researchers have emerged, trying to state the achievements of e-learning. Yet very little is known with regards to the use of e-learning as an emergency online learning platforms, especially during this pandemic. And this is the novelty of the study. So we intend to elicit information from students with regards to the effectiveness of these e-learning platforms. We want to know how efficient they were and how satisfied students were while using this e-learning platforms. That's the purpose of the study. We investigated these research questions in order to help us achieve the aim and objective of this research. The method that we have applied, we use the qualitative research design for the study. We designed a quick credit unit for the 7 ED pre-service teachers. We are the participants that we use for this study. All of them we administer with a structured interview question to elicit information, get information from them with regards to their their perception on the effectiveness, efficiency, and how satisfied they were while using the e-learning platforms. These were the format, the procedures that we use. After getting this information, all the information, the data that we got, were analyzed using a thematic analysis. Thematic analysis inquires familiarizing ourselves with, the teams, deriving teams, familiarizing yourselves with the team over and over again, trying to code the teams and presenting them in tables. And these were the teams that were derived after the analysis. We present them in tables. The bulk of explanation is in the research, the article itself. So I won't take lots of time to explain the table, but this table tries to talk about the opinions of pre-service teachers on the effectiveness of e-learning platforms during the pandemic outbreak. The second table talks about the opinion of pre-service teachers on the efficiency of e-learning during the pandemic. Why? The third table explains how satisfied the pre-service teachers were, their perception with regards to satisfaction while using e-learning platforms. These were the results that we obtained. Be that it may, there were certain observations that we found out during the course of the study. Students were of the opinion that, while e-learning has achieved a lot, it helped in enhancing collaborative learning, there were issues regards to the quality of audio and videos of the devices that were used. Also, most of the students, against our anticipated result, were of the opinion that most of the e-learning platforms that were used were not very effective. Also, they posited and stated that some of them also were not very efficient platforms for carrying out learning, especially during emergency remote online teaching. Very few were very satisfied. I've earlier on said that. Very importantly, the impromptu switch from traditional classroom teaching to learning was made students a little bit nervous and uneasy, and that could affect their perceptions with regards to the effectiveness, the efficiency, and the satisfactory index which they obtained while using these e-learning platforms. Recommendations: the introduction of e-learning, especially during emergency situations, ought to be gradual so as to remove the panic that students experience. Also, there must be in technical departments to solve the technical problems. More and more, lectures and symposiums and conferences like this ought to be organized for teachers so as to update them with recent trends, recent tools, recent advice, recent strategies for effective, online teaching. This will assist in achieving an optimum learning experience while carrying out learning through e-learning platforms. Also, we can liaise with telecommunication company to assist in providing very efficient internet services. Very, very important. And I suggested an online week. This can be organized to, it will be a week where there will be a switch, an immediate switch from, face-to-face teaching to an online teaching. This will help students to get used to the switch that might happen anytime to come. While we're anticipating a cure for the COVID-19, it is quite good for us to make preparations for the post-COVID-19 semesters that will come, so that issues of panic, issues which we have explained earlier on, would not arise in time to come. These are the references. I bring you greetings from Yirci University, Faculty of Educational Sciences. Thank you very much.
Okay, I would like to thank you, our presenters. We have watched 3 interesting presentation videos. Now we can start our and answer part. Ask to our presenters. We can get only 1 question from every listener because of the time constraint. Now we are question and answer part of this section. Any questions? Thought that the problems that we live in Turkey are similar to the other countries. For example, in India, in the presentation, Nur Aisha said, if the pandemic, if the COVID-19 pandemic hadn't happened, the technology integration into Indian education system would have taken many, many years. So I agree with that. Maybe the only positive side of this pandemic is technology integration. And I would like to ask a question to Solomon Ironsi. The student perceptions are mostly negative. They perceive e-learning as not satisfying and not effective. What about the teacher's side? What can you say about that, Solomon Ironsi?
Well, okay, thank you very much for that question. The research focused mostly on getting the perception of learners with regards to the use of e-learning. Well, why we did not investigate teachers' perception, I think I can just give a few of their perceptions with regards to the use of e-learning. Myself, I'm a teacher, and we had to switch to an emergency remote online, teaching without provision of lots and lots of online resources and platforms and devices to enhance teacher-student engagement and all that. I have an experience with a teacher whom we were using a flipped learning platform, and then we had to switch to this emergency remote online teaching. That teacher complained a lot that, she was very naive with regards to the use of online resources, how to manipulate these things. And it was quite difficult for her to get along, teaching through these e-learning platforms. So with these few, just like I earlier on said, we just investigated the learners' perceptions, but with my few experience with few of the teachers, few of them were very open, open to the use of these, platforms, though it was, a little bit difficult, by the time they kept using it, and we are receiving instructions and also, help and assistance from the head of departments, they get, used to using these platforms from time to time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Solomon Irensi. Okay, are there any questions from our listeners? If not, I would like to ask one Nur Aisha, are there any e-learning platforms that conducted by the Ministry of Education in India, a separate e-learning platform in India? Are there any separate e-learning platform which belongs to Ministry of Education of India?
Yes, there are many platforms that are organized by Ministry of Education, and one of which is Swayam, and the second is AICTE, All Indian Council of Technical Education, is also providing an e-learning platform for all other students, and some other also.
Okay, thank you very much.
Now, I don't know if I can ask a very small question, like with regards to my own study also.
Okay.
Please, like I earlier on said in that presentation, we are anticipating that the learners will, embrace the use of e-learning, because most of them are used to this technology, especially in the 21st century, use of social media platforms, WhatsApp, Facebook, and all that. Yet, from the study that we got, we found out from the findings of the study, we found out that the students were not very, very receptive of the e-learning platforms that we use. And we keep wondering what could be the motive, what could be the reasons behind this. We were expecting them to embrace it. It's a 21st century technology, 21st century devices and platforms that we're using. And yet, the perception with regards to the use of these platforms towards learning was quite negative. I don't know if there's any contribution or any contribution with regards to this. Thank you very much.
Over here, can I add something, sir?
Sure.
Okay. When you are saying, sir, use of social media, especially the social networking sites, generally, even the research shows, has been generally used for, telling about whether the class is happening or not. But when you are actually taking a class on a social site, it makes it more challenging. That is where we are using e-learning. And according to my perception, as I'm reading various researches and also observing what's happening around, the use of technology, especially among the people who are used to technology, is still easier rather than the people who are marginalized. So I think so. What we are saying and what you have been saying, it has somehow the technology and this COVID-19 pandemic has led everyone to the awareness for especially the marginalized and the need to be equated with technology. So maybe after maybe by the time we have next EDUCCON, we might be coming up with researches which will use the SNS sites for learning purposes also.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen and dear participants, very much for your contributions, but unfortunately I have to remind that our time, we have got a time constraint and the next session will start. So I would like to invite Professor Dr. Alparslan Gençay to host the meeting, to host the chair as a session chair. And enjoy the scientific events. Thank you.